It's one of my favorites. So, hello, welcome. It is 2 o'clock. Please alert me if I should pause for a second and wait as you're entering people, but I'm so happy that you're all here. Welcome, welcome. This session is going to be one where I hope to guide you through my journey, but at the same time help you through some of yours and make it interactive. But I'll first start with a little bit of story, some background, and then explanation about how this applies both in my life and in my classroom, and then hopefully get us to a place where I'm happy to help support you in wherever you're hoping to go and to use this information. So that is the plan for today. Hello and welcome. I am Stephanie Rothstein at Steph_EdTech, and this is entitled A Google Innovator's Journey, Growing Your Problems into Life-Changing Projects. Okay, so here we go. A little bit of background about me. So it has been quite a journey that I'll be taking you through over the last few years, but my role currently is I am an EdTech TOSA. That stands for Teacher on Special Assignment. That seems to be a term here in California that people are familiar with. Speaking of balancing, this is my youngest one. Hi, I'm presenting, Boo Boo. You want to say? I'm not the youngest. You're not my youngest? Okay, mommy is presenting. These are my children. These are 2 of my 3. Can you take Eliza out so I can continue? Okay, thank you.
So I take the bath.
Sorry, y'all. Welcome to life. All right. Thank you. Mommy's gonna lock the door. Even with grandma here. Even with grandma here. All right, welcome back. I know. I saw the heads like, you get me. Okay, so. Hello, I'm an EdTech TOSA, Teacher on Special Assignment. I am also the department chair for a design-based learning pathway called LEAD at Los Gatos High School. That stands for Learn, Explore, Act, Design, and design being for design thinking. And I work at the Los Gatos Saratoga Union High School District in Los Gatos, California. And that is my website, email, all of it is there. And then some of my projects, there's another website that's there for you. In terms of some of my background, I have only the Google stuff on here, but I am an innovator, a trainer. I recently got my coach certification, and all of those involve being level 1 and 2 certified. I am a leader of GEG in Northern California. That stands for a Google Educator Group, if you're not familiar. And I am a founder of Global GEG with some wonderful people that you will hear stories about very, very soon. So a little bit about my journey. So if any of you know Tracy Bondi, she is someone that many people know here at Q. So Tracy actually was my IT director in 2018. And in 2018, I didn't know anything about Google for Education, surprisingly enough. And I had always been using technology in my classroom. I have currently been teaching, this is my 18th year in education. I had always been using technology, and had always been somebody that when something new came along, I would jump at it. But I don't know that I necessarily was looking at it as an opportunity to weave into my own educational transformation or journey, right? It just was who I was as an educator. I taught yearbook. I utilized lots of programs in the classroom. I taught English. I wanted it to be hands-on and innovative. And when I met Tracy, right away, I was the TOSA, one of the TOSAs at our school district, and she said to me, here, why don't you take this application? And it was for Innovator. And I looked at it, and at the time it was advertising an innovation academy, an innovator academy in Sweden, and talked about that you needed to have some sort of transformative idea for the face of education. And I looked at Tracy and I said, I don't know who you think you're giving this application to, but that is not me, Tracy. Like, I'm doing stuff in my classroom and I'm good. And she just said, no, I think that you need to look at this. So I started to look into it, but I realized I needed to get some certifications before I could even look at it or entertain the idea. I earned my level 1 and 2 within a few weeks of her talking to me, because that's kind of me. I went, All right, let me look at this and see if I can do it. And then after that, I took that year to work on my trainer certification. So I built up all of the things that you need for your trainer certification and earned that at the end of that school year in 2019. After I earned that certification, I think I felt a little bit more worthy. And I don't know that I needed to wait, but in my own heart, I just needed to know that others thought I was, which I've learned I don't need to wait for anymore, which is part of my journey. I attended the D school, this logo that's right here, the D, that's a D school at Stanford. I went with the co-chair of the design thinking pathway to a conference at Stanford that was geared at design thinking. And I went to that. At the end of that, which I'm going to show you some of the slides from near the end of this presentation, and we're going to use them, they asked us to come up with our own big question that we want to work on. And in doing so, I realized that how might we question is what I wanted to apply to Innovator with. So it was as though kind of the path like set itself up for me. And I don't know if other people have had that experience, but that has been mine, where there are certain things that will come into my life, people that will come into my life that kind of set me on a path. And I am learning how to set myself on that path a little bit more purposefully. But I would say that I find that people and experiences come into my life for a particular reason. And so that moment going to the D school, I was doing it for the purpose of our design thinking pathway. And I realized at the end of it that it would transform me if I actually could apply for Innovator with my how might we question. And then the other big piece that you'll see down there is Carrie Bosco. She's our associate superintendent at our school district. At the same time as all of that was happening, she kind of shoulder tapped me and said, I think you might want to be working on your administrator credential. You've been doing a lot at our district. There are some things that I think it would help you to do to have that. And it might be a place where you start to think about. And my first reaction was, heck no, I don't want to do that. And then as I started to think about all the things that I actually wanted to do within the world of education, I realized that that likely is the next step in my journey. And I used the last year to work on and earn my admin credential as well. So that is at some point likely going to be a future step, but I'm getting ready and prepared for it. And then here we are in 2020. So much has changed since my experience at Innovator. I have now become a GEG leader, as I mentioned. I've launched a few projects, many projects. I've spoken, I did a TEDx talk that ended up getting picked up on the TED website, which was super exciting, about some of the journey. And as I mentioned, I got my admin credentials. So just a little bit of background before we dive in. And before I even really go even deeper, I wanted to share that some of the things that you should hopefully have seen is that I kept mentioning people in all of the spaces where I was talking. And what I've come to really realize is that everything that I do is rooted in people and relationships and connections. And so it was through Innovator that I met all these people here. Some of them I've never met in person, but it became a supportive PLN, a team. So much of Q is built around that idea of family and connection. And then some of these people then guided us towards the biggest project that I've taken on, which is the founding of Global GEG. And that project was not the beginning of my Innovator journey. I went into Innovator with a different how might we question, with a different goal set in mind. I actually went to Innovator because my pathway that I chair is a detracked pathway, meaning we don't separate students by perceived ability level. This is still near and dear to my heart. I still want to do things with it, but I couldn't figure out how to turn things into a project. And I have learned that some of the things for me that work best as a project are the things that I cannot stop thinking about, and I'm able to push forward and I'm able to figure out how. And the how really became true when we started to talk about Global GEG and creating something worldwide that would support other local groups in their ability to give professional development and in supporting their local region of educators. I also have some other people, some of whom are here in this chat today. So shout out to some of my like smaller and smaller PLNs that have happened. The top corner are some of my friends from high school that we've continued to stay in contact, and I've known them since I was 14. And then my bottom three are people that I probably talk to over and over. By bottom, I just meant of the slide, not in life. So thank you so much. I think Becky and Shannon are here at Q, and Bonnie's here in spirit. So thank you so much to everybody. And then the other piece that you should know, you already got a little glimpse. I am a mom to 3, and that's my husband. And so in terms of my ability to do any of these things, to dream really big, I cannot do it without really factoring in the people that are in my life, where I want to go and how I want to get there. So given all of that, this experience happened when I was in Singapore at the Innovator Academy, and I'm going to talk to you about a couple of my key takeaways from Innovator that I think apply to design thinking both in your life and school, and then thinking about your own projects and what you'd want to do. So this is Naomi Toland. She runs a Twitter chat right now with an amazing series called Empathetic Educators. When we were in Singapore, she asked to interview me when we were there. And that interview sparked a lot for me. She was really impressed that I was there in Singapore, taking a week out of my life, going on this kind of giant adventure of a journey when I had 3 kids at home, and when I had my full-time job. And she talked about this idea of that she was just kind of blown away that I would be able to do all of that she was in a place in her life where she didn't know if that was possible. And it was at that point that I realized I needed to stop being scared about sharing my own experience and my story, because hopefully it would inspire others out there to go, nothing should hold me back, right? I think some of the other things that she and I talked about are, I've been a type 1 diabetic since I was 6 years old. There are lots of things in my own life that I think make me stronger, better, and maybe more empathetic, hopefully, to others around me. And it is through those experiences that I've learned I need to not be so shy in sharing them, because I am often someone that I wait to share. I wait to think about it. And I think that Innovator has kind of unleashed something where now I'm giving presentations here at Q. I often am someone where I'm like, let me wait till I'm ready. And I realized, like, I've been waiting 18 years to be ready. And at what point is it long enough? And so I would say it's been long enough. And I think many of us are ready. We just don't know when and what to do and what is right and what's the right next step. Not that there necessarily is a right next step. So some of the books that have helped me, and this, I'm going to give you the link to this presentation and to everything, and it has links in here. But if you have not read, or if you don't own George Kouros's book, The Innovator's Mindset, it is a great one just for the idea of empowering your own learning and others' learning and unleashing that culture of creativity. So I highly recommend this resource as well. I have it sitting right next to me as I'm talking to you. And it's an excellent one. So I highly recommend that one. And then, this slide didn't want to go, but it's a lovely Innovator light bulb. It just has, I forget with Zoom, it didn't want to do that one. The other book that I would recommend when you're thinking about something dealing with your life. So as we move through, I'm going to be chunking this into a few categories, right? Is it that you're trying to think about how to think your own life and your next steps, or right? Are you thinking about trying to think some experiences for students in the classroom? And I think that those are two very different things, but they align, right? If you are not willing to show and honor who you are in that classroom space, and to really be someone who is modeling what you expect of your students, then I don't know how we expect students to do it either. So this is a great one if you're trying to figure out kind of next steps in a path. The Design Thinking Life Playbook, it's a new one that recently came out, and I have loved it. It has, again, I have it here. It has awesome, it's got the guide in it with space for you to actually be journaling within the book. So Some of the pieces that we'll be doing later come from both this and my experience at Stanford that I hope will help you along the way. All right, so I have three main big takeaways that I got at Innovator, and so I know that there are some innovators maybe that were here. I heard you, I saw you, and you are more than welcome to type anything that you would like in the chat if any of this feels connected to you. So the first big piece was this feeling of the imposter syndrome, and I think that it has been a piece that honestly was what held me back probably for most of my educational career. I was doing a ton at my school. I was always doing things in terms of a leadership role at my school in a department, but I don't know that I was somebody that would have made a slide about myself that had kind of my own path or journey before this last year. That just didn't feel like me. And I always wondered, like, is it my time to do this? And when I went to the Innovator Academy, I was sitting with people who had written books, who had hundreds of thousands of followers on YouTube or Twitter, right? Like all of those people that I fanned out on. That I was glad I didn't look up before I got there, and then went back to my hotel room and looked at who they were, and then realized, oh my gosh, that's who I was sitting next to. Like, good thing I didn't know all of that before, or else I would have freaked out. And then when we talked about imposter syndrome, I realized that everyone feels that way. Every single person feels that way. Every student feels that way. Every person in this space. I started to read Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead. It's the whole first introductory chapter, right? It's all about feeling like, are you worthy to be sharing what you're sharing? Are you the person who deserves to be doing that? And I finally came to the conclusion that you are the only you that is out there. You are the only one that's had your own experiences, and they are worthy to be shared. And so I needed to kind of just let all of that go. The second lesson that I learned during my Innovator Academy was about 10x thinking. And it's this idea of moonshot thinking, dreaming bigger than where you are right now. The idea that if we didn't dream in 10x, that we would have never done things like get to the moon. And through that, it's the idea of failing or failing forward, and embracing failure as a part of the design thinking process and a part of your process. And for many of us, I know myself included, that one is a tough one, right? Like the swallowing that pill of, is failure okay? But I think it's about reframing what you believe is failure, right? That if really what we're looking at is that we are doing something that is new, that is different, that is difficult, that is innovative, you for sure are going to have hiccups along the way. If it was easy, it would have already been done. And so I needed to stop questioning, like, why am I stumbling here? Why do I need to pivot? That's a part of the process, and it's a reason why I feel worthy to share those experiences. So hopefully we'll talk through some of your thoughts and maybe where you've pivoted and other pieces like that. And then the last one that I think has really, really stuck with me for this year has been this concept that Les Macbeth during the Innovator Academy brings up, which is called the someday versus Monday concept. And it's the idea of when you get ideas, when you have ideas, starting to separate them into categories of, is this a someday idea? Is it that 10x, like dream big, it's out there, out there, out there? That's a one day, a someday? Or is it something that is a Monday idea? Like, I can do this tomorrow. I can actually put this on a list. I can take a small step towards this goal. And my hope is that I can have both, but that I am building my Monday ideas to get me to the someday. If I just live in someday, I'm never going to get there. It's just going to be on a list of maybes that just keep getting bigger and bigger. And so it is my hope that during the course of this next 40 minutes left with you, that we can come up with some big someday ideas along with some Monday ideas for how to get ourselves there. Some other sources that may be of use to you, and these ones are great, specifically if you're looking for things for the classroom. So the first one is, it's from that same author is the Design Thinking Playbook. So this one models transformation. It can be applied to business or to school. The second are these solve in time cards. And if you don't know DeLinaire, I mean, these are amazing. I'm just going to grab my box that's right here. So these are actual physical cards that you can play with your students. You could even use them with staff, but they gamify design thinking. And it was his innovator project and has now become it's an amazing resource. I'm using it next week, actually, in my classroom. He has different sets of these cards. One is on general design thinking practices. He has ones that are related to social justice and empathy. He has ones on, here, let me just grab it so you can see. He has civil rights cards. He has social impact cards. They are amazing. I cannot recommend them enough. And they put it into an applicable way to utilize design thinking. And then the next two are great books for thinking about, well, the third one is by David Lee, another fellow innovator, and it's on design thinking in the classroom. I would say he works at a school that goes up through middle school. So I'm high school, but he has elementary and middle. So if that is your age range, he has a lot of applicable projects in his that is really useful there, and examples of how it's utilized in the classroom. And then Launch is an excellent, very inspiring book about kind of boosting inspiration and creativity. I highly recommend that one as well if you're looking to be inspired by design thinking. Okay. All right. So I'm not going to play this for you, but I usually start my class off with a video when I'm trying to teach design thinking. So if you are not aware, what I'd love to find out is a little bit more about you all, and go ahead and you can put some things in the chat for me. That would help me, is to know kind of where do you feel like you are in the design thinking process. So are you someone where you would say that you are an expert in design thinking? Give yourself a 5. And if you are a novice to design thinking, a 1, and somewhere in the middle, let me know. Okay. So, all right. Oh, I love it. Okay. So that's super helpful to me to know that we've got lots of 1s on design thinking. Then maybe I will play you. It's a very short video. So that would help. Yeah, Paul, I know. I'm so happy for you. So thank you, everyone. You can keep putting those in there if you have yet to do so, but thank you for letting me know. That's super helpful. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and play this for you. Oh, let me go back really quick.
Hi there. Have you noticed that the world is full of problems? There are big, hairy problems like poverty and disease and small annoyances like misplacing your keys. However, the geniuses at Stanford have come up with a process that will broaden your perspective and help you create better solutions, no matter the type of problem. This process is called design thinking, and it's here to change the way you tackle problems. Design thinking encourages people to explore new alternatives, creating options that had not existed before. Design thinking is successful because it focuses on the needs of the user. It's more than just good ergonomics. It's about understanding the context and culture of the stakeholders involved. This understanding is found using direct observation and qualitative data, which produces stories that people can really empathize with. Once the research is conducted, the problem solver is more apt to define what the real problem is. After diagnosing the true problem, it's time to ideate or brainstorm new ideas without the constraints of existing solutions. Because design thinkers learn by doing, these radical ideas are then made into simple prototypes that test possible outcomes. Rapid prototyping speeds up the innovation process because we only learn about the quality of our ideas when we test them in the real world. The process of ideating, prototyping, and testing is repeated early on so that mistakes are quick, cheap, and ultimately lead to success. So, why design thinking? The process provides a method and a unifying language for multidisciplinary collaboration, leading to greater creativity and better solutions faster. Suddenly, the world's problems are simple and manageable with design thinking.
Okay, so what I do with my class, just so that you're aware, this is a slide that came from a Pear Deck that I used with my students about 3 weeks ago. And so what I always ask them to do after we watch that is to summarize what you think is the purpose of design thinking. And I would ask for you, slides, why do you think that it would be useful to you? So if you don't mind, in our own chat, answering why you think design thinking would be useful to you as an educator, as a person. Why do you feel like design thinking would be useful to you? And so design thinking, again, is that idea of beginning with empathy and moving through this process. So maybe I'll show you that process as you're formulating your question, which is on this one. So the process is empathize, so having empathy, define, ideating, prototyping, and testing. So I just want to ask you, I will be giving the link, I promise. I have the link at the very end to this, and I'll be dropping that in the resource, Danielle, so no problem. So go ahead and put in the chat, what do you feel like about this kind of a process would be useful to you? Because that's where we're going to be heading, is thinking about how to apply this to your own either class or life. So I would love to know what about design thinking you think would be useful for you. I also ask my students why we begin in this place, why we begin in a place of empathy. And so those tend to be our beginning conversations, is on the usefulness of it, and along with, I should say, the why behind it. So we've got a few ideas about why here. So Shannon was saying, as an educator, I think I would encourage students to think outside the box and start thinking with others in mind. So that idea of bringing empathy in an effort to really aim for innovative thinking instead of being bound by their own limitations. Beautifully put. Michael was saying, I teach computer science. Yes, developing software, it's all about meeting the needs of a user, right? Like, you're designing something for others to use. If you do not keep other people in mind, there is no point to making your product, right? Or that software. And developers, right, it for sure has a huge place in all of computer science and all of engineering. It's rooted there for sure. My son just graduated from college and he has great ideas, but is unsure where to start. I love that. That's a great reason to be coming here. As a science teacher, it's important to problem solve and use critical thinking. Yes, for sure, industry standard. In my position as a specialist at the district level, this would provide me an opportunity to connect to the root of what educators need first to then direct my work. Yes, and make it authentic. That's excellent. And then I think it helps you and students truly and deeply celebrate the idea, and that every idea is valued. I love it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. You can keep putting those in the chat. But that for me, we do this in my classroom. That's how I begin with everything. I'm always talking through kind of the why, the meta of why we're doing what we're doing, while sharing out the specific project that we're working on. And every project in my class actually begins in this place of empathy. So I'm going to give you, it feels like many of you have some true whys, like that is a later slide of mine and I love it. And I'm going to give you a few examples as we move forward for how I've been utilizing it in my class. I did kind of touch on how I used it in my life or where it has gotten me, but I'm going to tie those back together, and then we're going to talk through some ways to even apply it deeper for you. Okay. So the next step that I end up doing with my students after we talk through why using design thinking is going through, Shannon had brought up this idea of beginning in a place of empathy or understanding, right? So if we're looking here, you need to actually have people to test that on, right? And so you might have something for your own life, or you might have an idea for your classroom, but you really will need to discover, is it the right way to go? Like, is this the direction, and how will I know that? And how, after having an idea maybe for a project or a direction, will I know how it will go, right? That's the prototyping stage and getting some feedback on that. And so you need some users to give you some expert experiences. And so often my projects begin with these user-directed experiences. And I just wanted to give you an example of that. So this project that we were recently doing, I teach 9th grade English for 2 of the sections of what I do. And my students were studying Greek mythology and the Odyssey. And their ultimate project was that they were creating a travel blog. We were working with a real travel company, and we were designing travel experiences that would take families and students to Greece. And they were writing travel blogs that would travel the path of the Odyssey. And the goal was to increase families wanting to travel using this travel company called True Greece, and to increase it by incorporating history, and connection to real world experiences into the travel experience. And so taking history and moving it to today. And so the students decided, okay, who would make sense to interview for this project before I actually start to write my travel blog? And what students said was that they needed to interview people that were expert travelers, people who had done this before, so that they would know then how and what to write about. And so we spent a few days of them actually interviewing, right? We're here in lockdown, but they interviewed people, or they called people, and they asked them, what would you want on a travel experience? And so that meant for me as a teacher, every group ended up coming up with their top 5, what their quote user would want, and they geared their blog at that particular user, who the goal is representative of more than just that one person. And that way, in that way, all of their projects, that was how I graded them, is that I looked at every person. Obviously we had a rubric, we had a way to grade, but in terms of the content piece, it was, did you meet your user's needs, right? And every team, many of them aligned, but every team had different user experiences. And so they listed out their questions, they asked their person, and it really took this project to the next level because they were meeting someone else's needs in the real world. After that, you usually then develop a point of view statement on behalf of that user. We're not going to worry about it. I included the slide here just so that you know it's a part of the process, but we're not going to stress about this. But essentially, it helps you kind of take what you understand about that user and then really build it into a statement that can help you move forward. Another project that I did in my class this was January, so this was the spring of last year. Was a project, my pathway, the 9th graders connect English and biology together. So we did a genetics and fertility unit guided by the biology teacher, but I did the design thinking aspect of this. And so what we decided to do, since it was on genetics and fertility, we wanted students to really be doing something authentic. So Miss Chick, the biology teacher, and I really started to think about, what could we do that would be authentic? And she said, you know, there are so many people that have experiences that our students maybe don't know about. Maybe that's where we need to begin. So we began by Miss Chick and I spent a few months contacting and connecting with people all over the world who had experienced issues within fertility. All different kinds. And we recorded as many of them as we could. And then we had a few amazing teachers at our own school who were willing to speak live to our students and share their story. And so this is one teacher here who is sharing her story of difficulties within her own fertility journey. And the students were in groups, and each group watched one of these. Either they went to the live, that was an extra opportunity, but they watched one of the recorded ones. And then that was the user that they were gearing their project towards. And the goal of that project was that they were prototyping something that would have helped people who, like that user, had an issue. So what was the identifiable problem of that user? Some of them talked about feeling like they needed a community, that they weren't alone, that people didn't share out their issues when it came to loss with fertility. Others talked about really being leery of some of the, quote, experts that were out there and wanting to know, how they could really gauge a good place to go for some of these things in the medical community. And so students then were gearing a solution that was based on what that user said they would need. And they were real people seeking real solutions. And it definitely changed this project. We did not do it this way the year before. The year before, they studied fertility, they mapped it out in biology, and that was in bio, and it was not done in this way. It wasn't design thought. And I have to say, I have never seen more growth from students in terms of maturity. These were 9th grade students sitting in a room hearing about people's fertility journeys. I didn't have one joke cracked. I didn't have one smile. People were like tearful when people were sharing things that were heartfelt. And I didn't have to ask them to be. I mean, we talked it through, but they understood that this was a process that was intended to, yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay. So with that, I would say my goal, my hope in this is to help inspire maybe your thoughts around what you want to do in your own classrooms, as well as what you want to do for yourself. So my own innovator experience and design thinking has really shifted me in ways that I never knew were possible. For those who were asking about the this session, the URL is up here. It'll be on the next few slides, and I'll pop it in the chat in just a second as well. But that's the bit.ly for it. And I would just say that it really has, like, it has changed me as a person. It has changed me in my life. It's changed my ability to think about what I want to do in the classroom. And so much has happened in both places since then. So here are the so much things that have changed, and then we're going to get into applying this for you. A year ago, ironically enough, I was at Fall Q watching Ed Campos Jr. give the keynote to Fall Q. If you were there, shout out to Fall Q from last year. And I loved it. And I remember at the end of that keynote, he said, "This could be you. This should be you. Everybody should be up here talking." And I reached out to him after that. And lo and behold, we did a presentation together through Global GEG, the group that I'm one of the founders of. And it was pretty much this very surreal experience, I'm not going to lie, that I went from like watching somebody that I really admired to then being in a room or virtually, but presenting with them on a topic. And then earlier at the start of Fall Q, I gave my first boom. Like, there have been many things that have started to happen because I was willing to leap, step forward and say yes, and kind of own my own goals. I started to do more writing. I started getting articles published. I started doing projects that connected me with Google for Education. And those were never experiences that I had on my list that I wrote down, like, this is an aspiration of mine. I didn't have any of that. It really was that I was intentional in my path, in my purpose, and I think those things led me here. But I am learning that I could be more intentional in where I want to go. And I'm starting to say yes to things more. So I want to help all of us to do that. So where we're headed right now is we are going to focus on this empathy and defining section in defining where you want to head. And we're going to do that using some of the particular slides that I got when I went to Stanford. So these are all in a public folder. It is here. It's linked here. I'm going to go ahead and put, sorry, I realized I said I was going to put, thank you. If you put that in there, thank you so much. Anne, you rock. Thank you. Okay, so Anne, put that in there. Thank you, Kelly. Okay. And thank you very much for that. If anybody's not able to open it, let me know. Okay, so this right here, it is a public folder that I have saved to my own computer, but it's a public folder that you have access to. They gave it to us when we went to the Stanford Design Thinking Conference. And so many of the slides that were at that conference, honestly, it is why I was able to become an innovator. Like, I'm I'm not blowing that out of proportion, but it made me feel ready. And so I found so much of what they did worthy. I mean, it's where design thinking was rooted. So one of the things that they did was they started with what they call an aspiration interview. We won't be doing this today, but I just wanted to let you know if you wanted to do it with your students. I love that they don't call it a problem interview. So it's just about listening to someone else and talking about what is it that you aspire to do. It's likely rooted in something that is causing you angst or something that bothers you or something that you might call a problem, but they don't focus on that. It's on embracing that problem, but thinking about it as a desire, an aspiration to change something. And so this is when I asked you that question about like, how do you hope to use design thinking? You were giving me aspirations, right? You were letting me know what it is that you want to do. And so many of you shared things that were all the things that they said for aspirations. They're human-centered, they're actionable, they're specific and inclusive. You all did that, right? We had computer science teacher talking about how I want to be able to do things with my students. They apply to the real world. I want to be able to do things with my students that are meaningful, right? It was not about like making you the most famous person ever. It was something that was human-centered for other people to help them grow, right? To help others do something. And they were all actionable. They were things that you want to take on and do. And they were specific and they were inclusive of others. So with that, here are a few examples of aspirations, but I want to see if any of you, maybe after thinking about this, might be able to now write it using I at the start of what you hope to maybe do, what you aspire to. So here's an example of one. I want to use design thinking to help my students think more critically about the world and how they can change it. So some of you had one that was similar to that. I love it. I want to use design thinking to change the way we offer professional development in our school. I know that we had some people that were here maybe from a district level. That's another way to build a culture of learning. So again, keeping in mind it's human-centered, it's actionable, it's specific and inclusive. Okay, so many of you shared things earlier. If you have some others that you think maybe it's shifted, we're going to be moving from those aspirations to how might we questions, which is a next step. So before we move into shifting it and actually writing about them and putting them together on a Padlet that we will use together, I just want to make sure that you feel good about your previous aspirations. And if you have any others that you feel like you are more than welcome to share them if something has come to you. Okay. So I'm going to keep going, but you are more than welcome to continue to add them into the chat. So you have an aspiration. Notice that started with an aspiration starts with I want to, I hope to, I dream of, right? It is what you want to do. A how might we question is different. So a how might we question is a process question, right? It's a how. So it asks, how might we do something so that something can happen? And what I'm going to ask us to do for the last part of our time together today is start to develop a how might we question. I'm going to give you a few examples, and then we're going to go to a Padlet together, and I'm going to do the thing that I do with my students, my staff, anybody that I'm coaching, anybody. And I'm probably going to ask you, Paul is probably familiar with this, ask you a million why questions, and we'll talk it through. Okay, so here's one example of a how might we. Different ways to think about how might we questions might also be what they call at Stanford the design levers. So if you have a how might we, I'll go back one. How might we use design thinking to improve our instructional practice? You're going to start to say, but there are so many things that get in the way. And instead of thinking of those things as, excuse me, as things that hold you back, they call them design levers, meaning it is because of these things that it will either allow you or not allow you to move forward. We want to allow it to move forward. So how do you use them to your benefit? So here's an example. They focused us on these four when we were there. Where you're having it, your role, having a ritual, and communication. Ooh. So here was someone's aspiration. I want to use design thinking to help my students think more critically about the world and how they can change it. Here's how that got turned into a how might we. How might we notice they used leverage here, and they used this, the roles of a specific group. How might we leverage community expertise to enrich student learning experiences? And pushed us in a direction, right? So the other piece to think about when you're developing a how might we, whether it's for your students, for yourself, for your life, for your school, this is what they had us do at Stanford, was write our own how might we. And they said to us, it can be on anything. If you want to change the world, do it. If you want to change the face of education, do it. If you want to change your school, do it. If you want to change your classroom, do it. But is it about a project? Do it. What is the how might we that will guide that next step? So what I would like us to do when you are thinking through, we're going to go on a Padlet in a second. This slide might become really helpful for you. I often focus on what is called the fourth word. And this comes from a website that Leslie Altman had directed me towards. I didn't realize how much I needed it until she showed it to me. But that fourth word becomes extremely important in your building of a how might we question, because it really is that next step, right? Are you trying to build something, inspire people, educate others? What is it that you want to do? And notice that the question is a we. How might we? It isn't saying how might I. It is saying how might we. It is inclusive of those that you are building this experience for and with. You are doing it together, right? Without them, there is no reason to be doing whatever project you are doing. If you're doing something for yourself, right, you don't need to put it out there for the world. So it's got to be about impacting others in some way. So here we go. I would like for you to go to this Padlet, and I will put this, I promise this time I'll type it. If you're typing it in the chat and you put the HTTPS in front of it, it should make it hyperlinked, but I will put it here for you. Okay, and what I would like for you to do, let me just be smart about it. Rothstein, here we go. I'm going to go here. I'm going to grab the link, and then I would like for you to join me on this Padlet. And start to put your how might we question. Okay. Oh, sorry. Let me put it for everyone. Here we go. There we go. Okay, so I want you to think about it. Again, it can be a how might we that is for your school. It can be for anything. So what I'm going to leave up here, I'll come back to the Padlet in a second. Thank you to those getting on there. I'm going to leave up here right now so that you can look at it at the same time. I'm going to leave up here this one, okay, while you're on the Padlet, if you're looking in both places. So think about a how might we, and remember, a how might we goes, how might we, and then you're doing something, right? And then it is so that, and it is what you hope will happen. It doesn't ask what exactly you're doing. It doesn't provide an answer. So please ensure that you don't give an answer. Otherwise, there's no purpose to doing a question. Okay, you don't want the answer to be embedded in your how might we. So I'm going to give you a second without me talking. I love these. Okay, so I'm gonna if you are someone who is better without having noise while you're typing, feel free to mute me for a minute. But this is what I typically do with my students, so that maybe if you're stuck, it can help you to think it through a little bit differently. Okay, so I'm going to just look right here at Michael's, and I wanted to say thank you so much to everybody who's putting them in here. And if you think of more, you're welcome to put more in. You don't have to have just one. So Michael says, how might we develop a plan to integrate computer science instruction across grade levels in our district? Okay, one of the things that I absolutely love, Michael, about your question is there isn't an answer in it, so check for that. What I would love for you to put in the chat, if you don't mind, is why. So why is it that you think that this hasn't happened thus far? And if you don't mind putting that in the chat to help us talk it through. And let me look at another one. I don't know if it's Lena or Lena, you're more than welcome to correct me if I didn't say that right. I was going to get to yours next. So Michael said the why it hasn't happened yet was that no one has really been assigned to that role. Oh, that's an interesting response, right? And I might ask again, right? There's a process with not just with Innovator, but with design thinking about asking why 5 times. So I would probably ask Michael. Michael's like, again, why isn't anybody assigned to that role? I mean, it's a really interesting thing to ask about. That's fascinating. And like truly, I would want to ask, is that I want to ask something else, but I'm going to just keep sticking with the why. So stop, Stephanie. There we go. All right. So, and let's see. No one's been assigned to the role. Computer science has not historically been a priority locally. All right. So now we're getting to what I would call the heart of the issue. So if we're really trying to delve into a problem, you have to be able to dive deep to understand at its core, what is the root cause of this problem? So if Michael is saying, how might we develop a plan to integrate computer science instruction across all grade levels? But at the root cause, there has not been an honoring of computer science as a curriculum. That's going to probably need to be addressed within whatever you develop. Right? Like you can't just have this big dream of, I'm going to do this without recognizing that issue that is in existence that will come to be, right? When you present to people, you know that elephant is in the room. And so it is about figuring out if that has been the case, why might we need to shift that mindset and how can we start to do that? But like it's a great one and I would love to keep talking to you about it. And Lena was saying, how might we inspire teachers to teach as confidently in the virtual classroom as they did in the brick and mortar classroom? An excellent question that is so pertinent to right now, right? And I love that you used the word inspire in yours, right? So my question about that is going to be, right, why did you pick the word inspire for your 4th word? If you don't mind putting that in the chat as I start to talk to others. Okay, Sabrina was asking, how might we transform arts education in the aftermath of the pandemic? Oh, beautiful question, right? So again, I would probably ask Sabrina why, and she used some interesting words here that clearly are like, there is feeling in the words that you have used, right? She used the word transform, and then she talked about the word aftermath, right? So that to me has a particular connotation, right? Like it has a feeling associated with it. And so I might ask why you feel like transformation is necessary. Okay, Lena, going back to yours, thank you so much. As a coach, my job is to make teachers believe in themselves. Excellent. Okay, so as a fellow coach, I love this question, right? And I think that it is one that we continue to ask ourselves always, but it is a true challenge, right? And so I might ask, why does it feel like even more of a challenge right now? And this piece, like I love that you said, oh wait, I was pointing at the wrong thing. Where was Nina's? Here we go. That you talked about their confidence, right? So what I'm wondering is, why did you use the word confident there? And would that help guide you in a direction about where you want to go? And then let me see if Sabrina, let's see. Okay, Sabrina was saying, personally, we will never be able to do things the same way. So much has changed and has especially deeply impacted the performing arts. I could not agree with you more, right? I mean, so much. And just to continue even to see the way that arts educators have embraced what is going on, but there has been a transformation, especially there. How might we energize educators, I love that use of that word, to engage in professional learning opportunities district-wide? And I guess my wonder for these is, how might these questions link together for you, Sabrina? And she was saying, I would like to help guide educators to see what we can still do for the arts, regardless of maybe where we are having to teach from. Yeah, I love it so much. Let's see. Science literacy. How might we maximize science literacy education to develop a next generation of informed citizens? Oh, that is beautiful. You have here like your true why, right? That you want to develop a next generation of informed citizens. I would ask another why to that, right? Which is being able to justify why. Why do you think that's important? Why did you use the word inform, right? Informed, I should say. And also your use of the word maximize in terms of literacy, I think would be interesting. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I agree. You could totally do this part on a flip grid, Noelle. I totally agree with you. I love it. For sure. Yeah. And perhaps, I don't know if you're replying to Sabrina or to any of our coaches that are on there, but I could use that here as well. I use Flipgrid in my classroom. It has been really quite powerful for students in that reflection, for that getting around the room. I love that. That was a great tip. Okay, so with our 4 minutes left, I'm going to get to a few more if we can. Shannon was saying, how might we empower teachers to take more risks in their classrooms so that students are afforded limitless opportunities and are prepared for their future endeavors? I love that we have some really empowering words even in your use there, right? Like limitless opportunities. So again, I would ask, you have two groups in there, right? You have the teachers, but your so that is about impact of students. And so I might just ask why you have both in your how might we. How do you feel like they're connected? Do you feel like they're always connected? Just might be some deeper questions there for a why. Sabrina was saying there's definitely connection. The distance learning has severely impacted our arts educators and they are in survival mode. I think many of us are right now. Yep. I could not agree with you more. They care deeply for students and have focused on maintaining connections regardless of content, but it's taking its toll due to the challenging circumstances our students face daily. For sure. And I think one of the biggest things, I'm going to move back here, one of the biggest things that I have learned in my journey through Innovator, through design thinking, through all of it, through my own journey as an educator, honestly, is that I have given many presentations and talks, and so much of my work is guided by relationships, connection, feelings, right? So many people talk about the fact that that's the root of everything. And if we are in this place where it has taken this emotional toll on us, then moving forward in content and inspiration and all of these big, positive, joyful things that we hope are joyful becomes more and more and more challenging. You're asked at the Innovator Academy to kind of release and let go of, if you were living in a world, we call it in my district, at the district office level, I would say, we call that the blue sky conversation. Pretend as if when you're talking that there is no barrier to what you could do. But I think it's a hard thing to do, to pretend there's not a barrier and to not censor yourself in your own response, because part of it is the reality of where we are. So for me, when I'm looking at my responses, I have to know that that exists. But perhaps what that does is just guide what I can do right now. It guides my Monday idea. It doesn't mean that those next ones can't be my someday ideas. And so that's, I will be looking at the chat in just a second, but I hope in my last minute that what we've done here is make something meaningful for you, that you really can think through what you would like to do in the next parts of your own journey. I do feel like it has shifted me, and I hope that it can for you. You are more than welcome to use anything in this presentation to help you. I have given versions of bits of this, but never this in itself. So if this was useful, you are more than welcome to connect with me. I'll go back to my first slide if you need my Twitter before I sign off, because it's 3 o'clock. I realized I didn't put it on my closing slide. Oh, Stephanie. So here I am. If you need me, I am here at Steph EdTech. And I just wanted to say thank you for your wonderful participation today. It has been lovely to learn with you and be with you. And how might we continue to change the face of education and the experiences in our classroom? I loved it. I loved hearing it, and you are more than welcome to keep going on that Padlet later on today. Enjoy the rest of Q if you have more sessions to attend. Thank you, everybody.